Hi everybody, welcome to today's video. If you would just go to the class plan section of the course website, click on today's date, it will take you to this post. Today's video is going to cover a review of retrieving articles from a database. I'm going to go back over destabilizing condition and claim and integrating secondary sources. I'm going to give you an overview of evidence and claim paragraph structure, and then talk briefly about resources for MLA citation. If you would watch the video, and then for Monday, draft an analysis paragraph on a scene, theme, or image of your choice from the drowned world that works in support of the claim that you've made and develops that claim further. And then for Monday, if you would pull together a rough draft of the first 3 paragraphs of your paper, introduction, a methodology paragraph that includes at least one secondary source, and an analysis paragraph. And then if you would, please bring a draft of your paper so far to class on Monday, and we will do a little bit of revision work. So like I said, you are welcome to use secondary sources that define terms, provide context, and develop your idea. That means you can use the first 3 readings that we have discussed, or that we did, Herring, Bennett, and Cohen. You're also welcome to use some of the research that you did for the paper or for the poster, or you can integrate criticism or Ballard criticism into your essay. So again, to find articles that other literary theorists have written about the drowned world, you start out on the Georgia Tech Library homepage. You go to Find Databases. Once you're here in the Find Databases page, you search for databases. You guys are going to want to go to the MLA, the Modern Language Association. Click on the MLA International Bibliography link. Once inside the database, click on Advanced Search. We're looking for articles on the drowned world by J.G. Ballard. So you're going to get 14 hits. Draw your attention to this article here by Jim Clark. You can download the full PDF. And then let's take a look at Clark's essay as an example of the type of structure that we're invested in. All right, so you can see in Clark's abstract, he follows the same type of condition and then destabilization of the condition in his abstract. So here's the condition. Surveys, studies of climate fiction identify these novels as foundational texts of the genre. So here's the condition. However, he wants to say, you know what, there's a problem of interpretation. Because Ballard wrote in an era before global warming had been identified, his fiction is as much psychological and ontological as it is psychological. Ballard both adheres to and deviates from the global warming narrative now accepted by contemporary climatology, working with and beyond the science fiction subgenre and post-apocalyptic fiction. So there's the destabilization. All right, so he's set up this condition and destabilization. On the one hand, this book's been read as a foundational text in climate fiction, and yet, if you think about Ballard within his social context, you can see that we might want to interpret it as psychological or ontological, as opposed to a progenitor of climate fiction. So that's the condition that he sets up. Okay, so Again, we're going to see the condition. So lots of critics have discussed Ballard in terms of the symbolic, which is fine, according to Clark, but maybe not the whole story. So just like the handout and the claims that we put together, he is going to argue, on the one hand, this is the way that this text has been interpreted, and yet I want to argue X. So you also notice here that here's the second paragraph, and the sentence that introduces the second paragraph announces that the readers can expect a paragraph on methodology, right? So you have the introduction that makes the claim, and then in that second paragraph, the topic sentence announces that what is going to follow are a variety of critical perspectives, yeah? All right, so he continues in the same vein with an overview, summary of context. He also defines his terms. These are just some suggestions for the ways in which you can use your own secondary sources. All right, so he's provided the condition, and now he is going to make the turn or destabilize it in keeping with the claim structure that he set up. So, however, readings which view climate change in these novels primarily as metaphor do not offer any assessment of their validity as proto-climate fiction, right? So again, it's a problem of interpretation that will then open out onto larger problems vis-a-vis climate change, and the politics of climate change, right? So he destabilizes the condition. Most critics have talked about the novel in terms of symbols, which is fine, but all novels can mean in lots of different ways. So maybe these other readings are not the full story, which I will now offer. Yeah. All right. So because this is a longer professional article, the methodology section, i.e., the section that locates this essay within a larger conversation about both Ballard and climate change, goes on for more paragraphs than I expect your essays to. So you really need an introduction and then at least one paragraph that introduces your context, your context through secondary sources, defines your terms, and then sets up your essay within a specific conversation. And in our case, that conversation is about collections and collecting taxonomies and valuation structures. All right, so after this author has set up his claim and established his methodology, he introduces he's now going to turn into the analysis of scenes, themes, and images from Ballard's novel to develop his claims. All right, just as a side note here, this chunk of text that I've highlighted in pink is an example of a block or long quote. All right, so when you're writing your essay and when you're citing texts, if the passage you cite is more than 4 typed lines in your essay, it qualifies as a long or block quotation. You want to set the citation off from the rest of the paragraph with a double space, and then indent the citation 1 inch from the left alignment, and then flush with the right. And then because the citation has been set apart from the rest of the paragraph, it does not take quotations. All right, so again, that is an example of a block or long quotation according to the rules of MLA citation. So our author has made his claim, located his argument within a larger context, defined his terms, and now has moved into an analysis of the text itself. This is not the best this. All right, so, excuse me, this is just a side note. I would suggest to watch out for unclear antecedents, especially in topic sentences. You want to ask yourself, how much information can I expect my reader to retain from one paragraph to the next? Okay, so what do I mean by unclear antecedents? Here in this topic sentence, the author argues, in the drowned world, this, emerges through the almost existential pointlessness of the monitoring work conducted at the lagoon station. All right, so what does he mean by this? Well, we have to go back up into the paragraph above and suss out what it is that he means. It would have been preferable, or I would ask you to do your best to be as clear as possible. So I think what he means is more than 2 decades later, Ballard's skepticism towards science. All right, so the this in this paragraph points back to his argument about ways in which Ballard is skeptical towards science. Um, but again, you don't want to make your reader work hard to understand your ideas at the sentence level. You can ask them to work hard to understand your conceptual framework or your analysis. But again, at the sentence level, you're always going for ease of reading. All right. So anyway, let's think about this guy's paragraph. So in the drowned world, this Ballard's skepticism towards science emerges through the almost existential pointlessness of the monitoring work conducted at the lagoon station. All right. So what's he done here? He's developed a subclaim, or he's written a subclaim that develops the destabilizing component of the initial claim and sets up the paragraph for close reading. So here's his claim. So far from the elemental representations other critics see, Clark, this fellow, argues that Ballard's novels critique science for taking nature out of context. Then it becomes incumbent on Clark to make his case through a close reading or analysis of Ballard's novel. So this first sentence checks back in with the claim and then sets up Clark for his close reading. So that's step one of any analysis paragraph. You announce what's going to follow in the paragraph while also checking back in with the initial claim. This is an important detail to note. So like this essay, do your best to set off citations with a signal phrase. And then remember, if the author, or in this case, the character, gets named in the signal phrase, then the only information required in the parentheses that follows is the page number, or if it's a digital text with no page numbers, then just the paragraph number. So here's this fellow who makes his claim that, Ballard's skeptical towards science, and then the gesture is, don't take my word for it. Here is an incident in the text that, through my analysis of it, will show Ballard's skepticism towards science for the following reasons. So here's the citation. All this detailed mapping of harbors for use in some hypothetical future. Citation. All this detailed mapping of harbors for use in some hypothetical future is absurd. Even if the solar flares subside, it will be 10 years before there's any serious attempt to reoccupy these cities. All right, so got claim, the signal phrase, drops in the citation, and then he's going to want to analyze the citation, drawing out components of the text that he cites in support of his claim, right? So instead of describing the context of the passage and the words that Ballard uses to render the sentiments to the audience, Clark makes this interpretive leap. He says that Ballard here undermines the modeling process at the heart of contemporary climate science, using the same broad basis of many climate change deniers. The provisional status of the future is used to deride science's present stratagems as based on nothing but hypothesis. Okay, so Clark develops the subclaim that he made. Ballard is not really the progenitor of climate fiction, as many critics claim, because he distrusts science. Clark develops the subclaim, Ballard is not the progenitor of climate fiction, as many critics claim, because he distrusts science. Not only does Ballard critique the ways that climate change hopes to forestall the apocalyptic future events in the present, he also derides other methods of future preservation. All the attempts to preserve the present for the future are impossible, Clark argues, because the future is only ever the decayed present. And Clark, you can see this is a pretty successful close reading, that he pulls all of these claims from a reading of Karen's response to Strangman's treasure ship, When Karen's calls or describes Stringman's treasure ship as being like bones, our author reads that phrase, like bones, as an example of Clark's distrust of preservation efforts, i.e., any attempt to preserve the present for the future is simply to anticipate decay. Is naive at best and destructive at worst. Okay, so finally, we've written our paragraph. We established the subclaim, introduced introduced textual citation, analyzed the components of the text that we cited according to form, theme, metaphoricity, etc., and then drew out from that analysis the destabilization of the condition to solve the problem of interpretation, which is the gist of the essay. All right, so last thing. So here, Clark, this fellow who's writing this essay, ends his paragraph with a final reading of Bodkin as a further example of Ballard's hostility toward the possibility of preservation. And I suggest that you do something a bit different in your paragraphs. I suggest that you may want to, in one sentence, tie your analysis back into the larger goal of the essay before transitioning into the next paragraph. So for example, another way to end this paragraph might be, my analysis of all of these examples shows how we shouldn't read Ballard as a progenitor of climate fiction, but instead as somebody offering a slightly radical viewpoint, inconsistent with the ways that people have read Ballard prior. Okay, so now if you would turn to your own draft of an analysis paragraph. So here, if you would read through the draft of what you already have. So your claim, what's the condition, how do you destabilize it? Your secondary source that opens up your claim and locates it. And then draft your own, pick out a bit of text that you're invested in writing in that helps develop your claim. Draft a topic sentence. Your topic sentence needs to restate your claim and transition from the previous paragraph, in this case, the context methodology paragraph, and introduce the new information to follow. You want to transition from that topic sentence that sets up, and then set up your citation. You can describe the context and a major theme in the citation you plan to include. Drop in your citation, and then remember to format long or block quotes accordingly. Go ahead and spend some time with your close analysis. So pick out a few key features from the bit of text that you cite, and then explain how those features help you understand the passage, the novel, and or the major themes of the paper. And then, and I think this is crucial, tie your analysis back into the larger goal or claim of the paper before setting up your transition to the next paragraph. All right, go ahead and write that paragraph. Don't worry too much about coherence on the sentence level. We will talk about those in class on Monday, and about how to revise the whole of what you have so far to move into the back half of the essay. Finally, I included a link to resources for MLA citation that takes you to the Purdue Online Writing Lab. Many of you should be familiar with this resource. So we can find all right, well, let's see what we got. Sorry, in-text citations. So here are just the basic in-text citation rules, just the general guidelines, an in-text citation, author page style. You are welcome to read through this resource as needed. So we'll also go over MLA citation as we move further into the rest of the paper. So, all right, if you have any problems or questions, just email me. Thanks for listening, and I will see you all on Monday. Have nice weekends.